Hang in there, it is.
Back. Smylie Kaufman for 61. Wow.
I'm Smylie Kaufman, and this is The Smylie Show.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of The Smylie Show. We have James Nitties back on the show. We had James join us last year to give us a bit of a preview of all of the Korn Ferry Tour graduates. And James, last year you gave us some incredible tidbits, a lot of guys to keep and watch on during the year. But the one that we've got to start with before we get into this new crop of Korn Ferry Tour players, Jake Knapp. We just got started doing one and dones right around after your interview, and Charlie, who's going to be in this interview in a bit, he was the first guy to say, you know what, I'm going to kind of lean on this Jake Knapp bartender, bar hopper type of deal, this info that he gave us in that interview. And we relied on your intel a lot. So I'm excited to have you back.
Yeah, I don't feel like that was me. That was Charlie. He picked him pretty well. I think he said that he liked the way he made 14 cuts straight on the Korn Ferry Tour, which is pretty incredible. Especially Knapp's one of those guys, like you said, he worked as a bouncer at a nightclub, but he's probably one of the most jacked guys on the Korn Ferry Tour when he was out there and hits it, one of the furthest. So, usually you don't pair that with early success from the consistency standpoint, but man, he's a good-looking cat. He's jacked. He's a good dude, California cool. And to get the W early, the first guy, he's not the guy I thought. I remember I said ADDC.
Yes.
And,
I was riding high on him all year.
Yeah, and everyone was. And another one was Chris Gotterup. But Gotterup, getting that win in Myrtle Beach. But he's one that everyone kind of had their eye on coming out of college. He was a superstar, and so it was a great graduation class. I'm always very fond of all the guys. I could say they're all going to win. But look, Grazeman was a guy, Max Grazeman was a guy, I think he's the best out of that class. He's the only guy inside the top 60, I think. So on the FedEx Cup points list. But, 12 guys I think currently are keeping their card. And it's pretty volatile. It's tough to go from the Korn Ferry Tour, especially as a rookie onto the PGA Tour, and just keep your card, let alone get a win. So props to you, Charlie. That was more so you. I said I like him, but you said you picked him for a win. That's crazy.
Well, James, I think you got to take a little bit of credit here, because I think you inspired a movement, and anyone that's listening to this show or watching this show that, was sprinkling a little cash on all of our one and done picks throughout the run we went on last year, shoot James a tweet or a DM or something and thank him, because he inspired the movement. He got us going. Said. First win right out of the gate. Thanks to your intel, you got us going. So you're allowed to take that credit, James.
Okay, I'll take a beer from the winnings. That'll do.
That's it. There you go. Perfect.
It's always easy to buy a pint, or I guess what would you call a beer in
Foster's? Foster's?
No, please wash your mouth out with soap. We don't drink Fosters in Australia. We call a beer in Australia like a schooner. It's more the size, like a pint, and a couple good beers would be like either Tui's, Carlton, or Cooper's. There's plenty. Australia's got plenty of good beers, but definitely not Foster's. That can you can use that to water your garden if you want.
Last time I ever make that mistake. Thank you for schooling me up before I head over there.
Schooner it is. All right, so we're gonna get James a schooner. Well, shoot, let's get right into this whole class from this Korn Ferry Tour graduate class, and the best place to start might as well be the most recent news in this past week in Utah. Matt McCarty, guy from Santa Clara, goes and wins 3 times on the Korn Ferry Tour this year, and then right away in his second start on the PGA Tour, goes on and wins. And Charlie and James, I'll quiz you right here. Do you know of another player that won in this second start on the PGA Tour?
You want to go first, James?
I need time. You go first, Charlie.
Okay, I'm cheating a little bit. I saw a graphic. He's also left-handed, and he's South African. Garrick Higo, Congaree. I think I have that right.
Dude, it's me. What are y'all doing?
that was a little.
What are we doing here, guys? Come on. It was a layup.
That's a little bit using yourself as the answer to your own trivia question. That's a little questionable. We're gonna have to chime in and see how the viewers feel about that.
sneaky flex too. I like it, Smylie. That's
what are we
great.
doing here, guys?
Yeah,
I mean, the Shrine. It is Shriners Open week, so
That's right.
I mean,
the fifth major.
It is the fifth major. Well said. Well said. So let's get into that, right? Matt McCarty wins in Utah, 3-time winner this year. I mean, from what you saw in his game this year, James, did you see that quickly, right? I mean, he's obviously playing some incredible golf, but did you see it translating this fast on the PGA Tour?
No, definitely not. It's, and that's not a slight against Matt. It just... He's a really good player, but it's also hard to kind of get the eye test of these guys on the Korn Ferry Tour because they're playing, most of the courses are around 7,000 yards and everyone's shooting 25 under and it's a putting comp. You don't know if, usually hitting a lot of fairways doesn't equate to going low. It's just about how far you hit it. So, look, he's a guy that came to the Korn Ferry Tour Championships last year and after 35 holes, he was inside the top 30 and made a quadruple bogey at the last of Victoria National in the second round. And it took him a lot to recover from that. He just missed his going to the PGA Tour. He talked about how, he wasn't ready. I think he kind of was. And then, look, 3 months ago, he hadn't had a single win on the Korn Ferry Tour. And it came to the Ascendant in Colorado where he had the 54-hole lead, shot 75 in the last round, didn't get it done. And then went out the next week, didn't let it make him negative towards how his game was trending. And he went out and won the next week. And then me and Shane Bacon, when we do the Korn Ferry Tour broadcast, we call a lot of these guys and we called him and he was just a kid in a candy store. And he said, you know what, I think I'm playing good enough now with a little security that I'm heading to the PGA Tour because after the second and the win, he locked up his PGA Tour card. And then he went off and rattled another couple. And I want to say he had another top 3 in there as well. So a guy that on the Korn Ferry Tour got himself into the top 60 in the world. There's not a lot of guys that have done that in the past. I think Michael Sim was one that got inside the top 50 because he won 3 times in a year and was playing great golf. But look, he's the hottest player on the planet right now. And I told a lot of people, hey, you should sprinkle some little bit of cash here on this guy over these next couple of events because, look, he didn't even have to compete at the Korn Ferry Tour Championships because he'd already extended his lead from second position by more than 600 points. And, last year, not even, no one made it into 2,000 point range. And this year, 2 guys did in Max McGreevy and Matt McCarty. So, look, he's picked up distance over the years in Matt. He talked to us about how he's been thinking about that for the last year and a half. He wants to kind of prime himself for the PGA Tour before he even gets there. And you hear him talk, he's just comfortable. He's a good kid. He's got a really mature head on his shoulders for a young guy. And he does everything so well. And I don't know if you saw it at the Desert Open last week, that 2-shot lead, steps up on the last and pipes one down there, 330, quick TP,
so
pick
good.
up.
So good.
He's to tie a bow in it. He's just one of those guys that thrives for the moment. And I think he plays with that auto chip on his shoulder, considering he's not, the longest off the tee and doesn't pass like everyone's eye test straight away. But I think he's a guy that could, obviously he's already won. So it's like, I don't even need to say that he's a guy that could really go out there and do special things.
Yeah, now he's in the Masters. He's not subject to a reshuffle, so he's in such a great position, like you said a second ago, in that he can play with a bit of house money and not have to worry a bit about status, kind of like you'd mentioned on he's playing that way in free at the end of the Korn Ferry Tour season to eventually play his way into that Battlefield promotion. So you've seen guys do that when I've always said this, that players, when they're comfortable on tour with their status and not worried about job security, that's when they play their best golf. I mean, that's the most nervous. You ask any PGA Tour player when they're the most nervous, they'll say, well, it's when I was at Q school. It was when I was on the cut line, when what meant something whether they were going to have a job or not. So now Matt has elevated himself into a position to where, he can just go focus on improving and learning on how to travel and play on the PGA Tour. But he's off to one heck of a start.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on Sports Grid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on Sports Grid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on Sports Grid.
I want you to kind of sum up this class. I don't know why I want to call it a draft class. This isn't a draft. These guys earn their way out here. But what, just describing this class versus maybe last year's, or just something that has stuck out about these 30 guys. Anything that come to mind?
Look, I thought last year was going to be incredible. I think I picked 5 winners coming from, the Korn Ferry Tour, last year's graduates. We're at 3, so there's still a couple of events left to get to that 5. But I thought, look, it's so difficult. You know how it is, Smylie, and getting onto the PGA Tour now, if you're not in those signature events, it's, I think, only 7 guys that didn't play in the signature events made it into the FedEx Cup Playoffs. So it's such a leg up. And for these guys coming in off the Korn Ferry Tour, where they kind of slot in, I think Rafa Campos finished 30th and got the last card last year. He's only played 20 events this year, or 21 events. So it's and his first event came at the Farmers. So it's hard making up ground quickly. So you do need to do what a Jake Knapp or a Goddard does, and go out and win early. Mm-hmm. But I think the difference between the two classes, it felt to me this year there was just a lot more experience. Even though we're going to have a lot of rookies, there was a lot of 2-time winners. So a lot of the points were sucked up into the top of the points list. So there wasn't as much. There was a lot of separation around that 30 number. So I felt like you said before, and it's so important in professional golf, is security turns you into a different golfer. So if you have that security, then you could have a guy that could live on the cut line or win PGA Tour events. It's that like valuable to have in your back pocket, knowing you've got a full season. So I think like guys like Harry Higgs heading back, look, I think he talked about it himself. I think he needs to be a little nicer to himself when he's competing. But Tim Vitting, Swedish kid, he won back-to-back in the middle of the season. Frankie Sappen, he's a kid that shot 58 this year at the Veritex Bank Championship. He just got his first win, and he's a guy that I think, even though he's going to be a rookie, he just feels like he's been on tour for a couple of years. And
Sappen?
Frankie Sappen. And like when he's a kid that just won. He's had a little success on the PGA Tour with some sponsors invitations, but he just won at in Ohio at the Scarlet course, which I hate, by the way. It's brutal. It's not fun. And I mean, I think he hit one green in regulation over the last 8 holes and still extended his lead. So he didn't play his best, but it looked like he won very easily, and he was never stressed. He had the swagger. He was club twirling, even though he was missing greens. But the short game under that pressure when he hadn't won on the Korn Ferry Tour before, I thought that was pretty impressive. So, look, there's, as I said, multiple winners. There's guys that are coming to the PGA Tour that already know how to win. And, look, I could go down the top 30, but if there's some other guys you want to touch on.
Yeah, no, I think you just set it up kind of perfectly what we're going to talk about. And another player, too, that actually shot, it was Cristobal del Solar, I guess is how you pronounce his name, shot 57 this year. I believe that was down in Bogota. Is that correct? Is that where that one was?
Yeah, he shot it down in Bogota. Look, the course was 6,300 yards at elevation. I've
played it, and I think I shot one over. So yeah, let's kind of move past that.
the way I kind of prop him up is he smashed the scoring record by 4 shots. So I'm like, okay, he broke the course record by 4, and he didn't get up and down from the front of the green on 17, and he said his caddy gave him a bad read on 18 from 6 feet. So he could have even had 55.
It was just like a putt-putt type of situation, man. That's just some incredible golf. But I think Charlie and I, before we got on, we were kind of going through this top 30, and there were some names that stuck out, and Charlie had seen some of these guys play as well. So I know he wants to ask you about a couple of guys. So I'll let him kind of take the floor here on some of the guys that he had circled.
Well, I do want to get in that direction, but before we get too far off Matt McCarty's win, this is a topic that Smylie and I discussed coming off this Black Desert Championship, and I'm just curious about, and this is a bit of an abstract, bigger picture question, but just about venue selection on the Korn Ferry Tour and the difference in the type of golf that's required to graduate and be one of those 30 guys that make their way to the PGA Tour and what you're asked to play on the PGA Tour. And, this last week, Matt talked a lot about he's a Scottsdale guy. This desert golf felt like at home for him. We saw a winning score in the 20s that was more akin to what you'd see on a Korn Ferry Tour event, where you're looking at some of these cut lines and it looks like a misprint with how low some of these guys are having to go to make it to the weekend. Do you think, like, if you were to change, and I know some of the Korn Ferry Tour venue selection is sponsor dependent, it's host dependent, but is there, if it's like, James, you're a Korn Ferry Tour commissioner for a day, is there a way you change venue selection or something you'd look for in a different sort of way to better prep these guys for the test of golf they're going to arrive and have to play well to succeed on the PGA Tour?
100%. You hit the nail on the head. The one rumor that even when I was playing on the Korn Ferry Tour amongst players and guys still now, it's almost that kind of feeling of knowing that you're going to a course that's, the old school country club style of golf that doesn't hold up to technology and doesn't hold up to the speed that these guys swing it. And let's be honest, like the Korn Ferry Tour and even college golf, they all swing it faster than the PGA Tour. The wave is coming. So these courses, like you said, being on the Korn Ferry Tour, I'd always be, there was 4 or 5 events in a row, especially through the middle of the summer, where the cut was -6, -7, even -8. So you get out there and you get off to a slow start and you hit the first 6 greens in reg, miss a couple putts, and you're feel like you're getting lapped. So it's a hard mentality to just be like, all right, I got to bus driver as hard as I can and then, make everything inside 15 feet. And you're not even wearing out any club above a 9-iron. And it just gets to the point where, look, I look at Korn Ferry Tour stats every year. The way I know if a guy's a good long iron player is I just look at his par 3 stats, because they're the only holes that play over 160 yards for a shot in for regulation for these guys. So, look, exactly. I would change the golf course setups and give these guys a bit of an opportunity to play some different styles of golf. And there's about 8 or 9 events of the year that play really difficult, tough test golf courses. And that's why McCarty's so impressive, because he got it done at the Pinnacle Bank. He was in the lead at Ascendant, and then he did it at courses where it had to go low. So it's hard, because there is some courses like that on the PGA Tour where you just know everyone's going to go low, but there's no separation. So when you got the guys that come to tee it up and they know it's like, all right, you kind of see them shrugging their shoulders and they're like, well, looks like I got to shoot 6.5, 6.5, or I'm not going to be inside the top 30. It doesn't really show what the talents of these guys have. And that's why it's hard sometimes to dictate or kind of predict which guys are actually going to translate or really make the jump to the PGA Tour seamlessly.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sports Grid.
Charlie, the Walker Cup, who were the players that you saw? You saw Ricky. Who else was there?
That's exactly right. James, I have a little bit of show and tell for you here because I have a little piece of memorabilia from the 2021 Walker Cup, little Mother's Day pin. And there were three guys on that American team. Well, I watched all three of them play. You mentioned Ricky Castillo, John Pock, and Quade Cummins, which as the kids these days, they talk a lot about aura. Quade had a real aura about him, and I loved watching him, following him around. So I was just curious, obviously a few years removed from that team in 2021, but just those three guys linked via that team, what do you think their prospects are on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, so we hit a bit on Castillo. He's kind of one of those players that knows he's good. Like he finds his way into contention a lot, top to bottom, same thing, does everything well. Maybe I'd like him to have a little bit of a better attitude towards himself. He gets pretty hard on himself when he's not delivering or not doing what he's meant to, like we all can on the golf course. But I feel like if his kind of outlook about being little kinder to himself, I think he'll be able to, really dial it in. And John
I like
Park,
his swagger.
Good swagger.
I think he's a puka shell necklace guy.
Yeah.
I want to say. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Had to mention the necklace.
Lets it fly, it's good. I dig that too, and it's look, John Park's kind of the same. The Park's they were all having fun, and I might have partook in a libation after they got their cards with them, and just watching them celebrate, and little different guy. Park coming out of PGA Tour University, won every award in college, and then he was the number one on PGA Tour University right before they actually gave the PGA Tour card away, to the guys like they have over the last couple of years. And then he went on and to have no success at all on the Korn Ferry Tour, lost his card, really had to come back and turn it back into a PGA Tour card like he did when he got a victory this year. And then but he does everything well, doesn't hit a long way, but doesn't miss fairways, top 5 in accuracy, very, very efficient from the fairway because he has to be. And then the last one you mentioned there was Quade Cummings. It's funny you say that. He has that air about him where super nice guy, but he's held like really high from all his peers. It's almost like he's kind of been out there a long time, and everyone always talks about Quade, like, oh man, Quade, he's so good. This guy, like, you know, and he's pretty quiet kid. He's not outgoing, and you're not going to notice him when he walks into a room, but he's the guy that apparently, look, I saw it a little bit on show this year, but he has, I heard, the greatest short game ever. Like all the guys out of that Oak Tree National hotbed, which is about 20 tour players that play at that course. Like Zach Boshu was talking to me about, hey man, I just hang around Quade Cummings as much as I can. I learn. He's one of those guys that uses every part of the wedge to hit shots. Like it's kind of really cool. And also he was the best putter on the Korn Ferry Tour this season. And apparently, I need to ask him this, but apparently he doesn't use his gamer when he's at Oak Tree National in Oklahoma. He uses a different putter on the road than he does when he's home.
It sounds like a decky type of stuff going on here.
And I get it. The greens at Oak Tree are like super fast and, can send shivers down your spine. But yeah, he's a guy that just is apparently a magician with the wedge in his hand. And he just, once again, he got his card really easily this year without a W and didn't look stressed at all. It almost knew that he was going to get it. So I'm excited to watch him, play big boy golf and especially with how everyone else talks about him.
Go ahead, Charlie.
I was just going to say the short game, that was what stood out and following him around, just like some tight lies of Seminole. You get short-sighted there and it's tough to get up and down. And he had some good mitts on him. And that was a solid squad. Davis Thompson on that squad, Cole Hammer. There were some very legit players. So I'm really excited to see how those three fare getting promoted this year, earning their cards.
Yeah. Charlie, you're really good at using just one part of the wedge.
Yeah, so I'm a big hosel guy, James. You could do a lot with the hosel. You gotta really learn how to use it to. You get some funky spots, but trust me, once you get comfortable with it, it's a great piece of the wedge to use.
Charlie, the hosel's much closer to the sweet spot than the toe, so you're not far away.
That's what I've heard. Many people saying that.
low blow from Smylie.
When you said every part of the wedge, I was like, this is too easy. I mean, I got Charlie on here most of the time on these Wednesdays. Charlie's hanging out in the background, but I had to throw him under the bus on that one.
He's promoting an upcoming video, James, where we had just one of the sweetest hosel shanks you'll ever see around the green. So everyone look forward to that on the YouTube channel.
Oh gosh, man, oh man, it's fun to play golf with Charlie. I've played with James. Charlie, actually, him and I've played together. I don't know where we got paired together. Do you recall?
Oh, I know Korn Ferry Tour, maybe Portland, maybe. No, I don't know. Yeah, it's somewhere that wasn't a common place, put it that way. I know they don't play there anymore. That's all. Maybe Pittsburgh, yeah.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sports Grid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The early line, only on Sports Grid.
some guys. We want to kind of run through a list and hit some guys of interest. And the first name I want to talk about is a man who might have had a schooner or two in his life, a fellow countryman of yours, Koala Carl Phillips. I'm told this is his nickname. This is a guy who we should maybe take a page out of his notebook. He's got 38,000 subscribers on his YouTube channel. So the guy's doing well on both the golf course and the media world. We had a follower of this show that reached out in our DMs earlier this year and said, you got to get on Carl. Like, this guy's got an incredible game, super interesting story. For those who don't know much about him, can you just give us the full background, the rundown on Carl, why we should be excited to see him this year on the PGA Tour?
Yeah, exciting. Like, I be honest, I didn't know a lot about Carl Phillips before, a year ago. I knew who he was. I knew he was a stellar college player. Lived in Australia till he was about 13, dad from Perth. His dad started the YouTube account for him, and almost like a story of Carl growing up, going through golf. So if you meet Carl, he's not really a YouTube golfer. Like, he doesn't really want, like, he appreciates it, but it's not like he's leaning into the, hey guys, subscribe, come join the chat. Like, he's not that guy. He wants to be a PGA Tour player. So look, I'm sure he's very appreciative for what his dad did there, and obviously would have opened some doors. But he moved from Australia. He does not have the accent, if you know. So he moved from Australia when he was 13, eventually going to Stanford. And then, look, I'll tell you how he got to this point of getting to the PGA Tour very quickly. He's playing the last hole at the NCAA championships, and, he's right around the lead. And he knows all these kids now in college, they're thinking about the PGA Tour University program. Like, that's the one goal they have at the start of the year is like, hey, I want to win, get that PGA Tour exemption, or I want to finish top 5 and get the rest of the Korn Ferry Tour year. Like, you'll get about 13 events on the Korn Ferry Tour if you finish in the top 5, and then you get the auto exemption to final stage of Q School. Mm-hmm. And then really these guys, you're going to turn that into basically pretty much a full Korn Ferry Tour card. So it's a good transition out of college. And he's coming down the last and he's right around the lead. He makes a bogey and it drops him from 6th to 10th. So that it turns into top 10 gets you conditional Korn Ferry Tour status, but you're not going to get any starts for the rest of the year. So he goes out, he Monday qualifies into his first event. I want to say it was the Ascendant, top 25, shoots 66 in the final round in the Price Cutter Charity Champion the very next week, top 25. So top 25 gets you into the next week. So I think he had 2 top 15 finishes. Then he goes to the MV5 Invitational, shoots like 63 or 4 in the final round, finishes second. And then he goes to Utah the very next week and he wins the tournament. So it's like, wow. He goes from having no starts, probably going back to second stage, because if you're not inside that top 5, you don't get the final stage, to turning it into a PGA Tour card, not even being a month out of studying chemistry or something, whatever they do at those smart schools at Stanford and stuff. So and then I'll give you, he's a guy that passes the eye test. He averages about 330 off the tee. Another very mature for his age kind of guy, really good iron player, great putter. So you might have to polish that stone a little bit, but as far as like hitting a long way, having the tools like to walk onto the PGA Tour, he's super exciting. And the way he won in Utah after having little to no experience and after finishing second the previous week, and as I said, he'd only been professional for a month, it was really impressive.
Koala Carl, that is a heck of a nickname too. So already, like, I have some questions written down here, but best nickname, that's a no-brainer there. Koala Carl, check. So we got that all sorted out, but I kind of want to get into who you think the most talented player of this entire bunch is, because, when I look at any Korn Ferry Classic comes through, it's always about, who is the next potential star, a guy that's like a Scotty Scheffler, a player that's a can't miss prospect.
Well, look, it's a bit of I'm leaning on the fact that Matt McCarty just won on the PGA Tour. Statistically, the best golfer and who I think is going to be the star out of this class is two different people. Like McCarty's unbelievable, fills up the stat sheet. He already gets it done in so many areas. but he doesn't quite look like that superstar athlete when he hits a golf shot. Like he looks like a lot of other golfers. He just does it very well. But then one of my favorite guys, and I've been banging on about this guy since the start of the season, since pretty much the end of last year when he didn't even have a Korn Ferry Tour card, is Aldrich Potgieter. He's a South African kid. And he won the AM championship at 17. So over in Europe, he was the second youngest to ever do that. He didn't go to college. He decided, hey, I'm going to get my experience by turning pro and just seeing how I do. So he gets into the US Open, LACC, makes a cut. That gets him an exemption into second stage. He then wins that by 4, and they brought in a new rule where if you win second stage, you get guaranteed 8 starts on the Korn Ferry Tour the following year, no matter what happens at final stage, which I think is a great rule. You know, you win second stage, you should get something. So, yeah,
what?
it's a new one. If you're a medalist at second stage, you get the first 8 starts on the Korn Ferry Tour, no matter what happens at final stage the following year. So he turned
That's
that
a
into
lot, man. I don't know if I agree with that. 8's a lot. I would have said 4, maybe.
It's a lot. Well, maybe, look, I'm pretty sure it's 8, but it might be 4. But I'm pretty sure it's 8, yeah. So he won by 4 there. And then he goes and he wins the second event on the Korn Ferry Tour in the Bahamas. And I remember texting Shane and being like, we're not going to get this guy in our broadcast window because he's going to win 3 times before we even see him. So, look, he struggled with it.
Tell me about his game. I want to hear about his game because, like, the cuts, you know, it's 13 out of 24, but there's obvious superstar in this kid.
Yeah, look, okay, he averages, I think his swing speed's 127, ball speed's right around 190. And
is that it?
My God.
He says that's his cruising ball speed. He lived in Australia for a long time, so he had his speed early. So then he tried to hone his game. He apparently he's got 180 ball speed on a driving iron as well. So he learned to do that when he won the AM championship. Hits a great stinger. Australian under 15 wrestling champion. He's South African, obviously, but he spent a bit of time, learned how to flight shots. But yeah, he just great touch. He had to get up and down on the last hole of the Tour Championships effectively to get his PGA Tour card. So
yeah, I saw that up and down too. Wasn't easy.
No, and he missed the green with a sandwich in his hand for his second, but he was feeling it. And it's a security thing. Like you said, I think now he has security. He could do special things. He's still a little bit inexperienced in some certain areas in decision-making, needs to find more fairways. He's really pretty much dead last in accuracy on the Korn Ferry Tour, but that's usually how it works when you hit it 340 average. So
the fairway next up there.
I'm excited. And look, he nearly missed his card from winning the second event. You remember a couple of years ago, Akshay Bhatia won the first event and actually didn't get his PGA Tour card. So it's a tough decision to know all year that you're inside the 30 and then you get around the bubble. But, man, this kid's going to be exciting. And you'll see it. As soon as you watch him play, you'll just be like, wow, okay, as soon as this guy refines some things, he's going to do some really cool stuff.
This is our guy, James. Last year, we broke out the Smylie Show bandwagon for Aaron Rai. We were the Rai guys. We rode that to the finish line. This year, we're taking the bandwagon back into the shop. Fresh paint job. We're the potheads this year, right? We're all in on Aldrich. We are gonna. I cannot wait to see him tee it this year on the PGA Tour. Everything you've said to me. The youngest winner on a PGA Tour sanctioned tour at 19 years and whatever 4 months it was, hits it, 190 ball speed, hits it 340 out I cannot wait to see this guy play PGA Tour golf.
Yeah, he'll go straight into the top 5 in driving distance. He just has to hit fairways. So I don't know. He shot 59. Obviously, it was at that course, it was 6,300 yards, but he still did it. He's still the youngest kid to ever shoot in the 50s and Korn Ferry Tour and PGA Tour sanctioned event. So it's he's going to be real fun. Now I don't know if he's my Jake Knapp. If he gets comfortable, he could easily go out and possibly win by 2 or 3, maybe in one of those opposite field events. And as soon as he, as I said, just refines some things with his maturity, he's going to be really impressive, like just superstar style, really.
That kid on the 2-point conversion play was wide open on the right side of the end zone, and the kid threw it about 15 rows over his head.
People crystallize Georgia and Alabama. They put them on the shelf above everyone else, and they're just not there this year. I thought the kid Beck was great on Saturday, but they barely beat Mississippi State, who is porous.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on Sports Grid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on Sports Grid.
Who's going to be able to go play at Torrey Pines right away and be able to play some big boy golf?
I like another guy, Ryan Gerard, who played, really well, especially after he turned pro, and then played a couple events on the Korn Ferry Tour and PGA Tour Canada. But then when Monday qualified for the Honda Classic, everyone knows, I think he went on to finish fourth there, and then trying to work his way to that kind of temporary membership on the PGA Tour on the FedEx Cup points list.
It's hard to do.
I think he led through 3 rounds at the Barracuda and ended up finishing top 5 there. But, man, I mean, he was close to getting his PGA Tour card all the way from Monday qualifying, and then he comes out onto the Korn Ferry Tour this year, and he didn't even – I'm not sure how it shaked out, but he didn't have great status on the Korn Ferry Tour even after having that stellar season on the PGA Tour. It worked out to be he got the first 4 starts or something through where he finished last year. So he went out, he got himself, a full card pretty early, and then, he came and won the BMW Charity Pro-Am, and the way he did it, it was just so impressive. And he probably should have had another victory at the Simmons Bank Championship not long ago. But he was just a guy top to bottom, great iron player, putts great, hits it long enough and straight enough. It's always... Look, there's always the guys that hit it long enough coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, but then you can almost predict by the yardage where they rank in accuracy. It's very, and then once you see a guy like a Gerard where you're like, okay, he's top 50 in distance off the tee, but he's also top 40 in accuracy, you're like, okay, that pairs up beautifully because, you're only giving up 10 to 12 yards to the longest, but you're also hitting 3 or 4 more fairways than them per day.
Yeah, and the big rig kind of fits that category too, right? Because he's a player that Steven Yeager, he's a guy that's gone back and forth. You just said it. And maybe, the big rig coming back down and finding his game a bit. I think that's the one player that I have circled from this entire top 30 list. I think Ryan Gerard's a great call, but it just seems like a guy like Harry Higgs has had success on the PGA Tour. He's made the FedEx Cup playoffs twice. So he's going to be probably the most confident knowing that he can do it. But it's always the question mark of, being in that category, that Korn Ferry Tour category. It's a tough place to play off. You got to get off to such a quick start. Yeah.
And look, big rig, big, beautiful. He's for a guy that doesn't hit it a long way, he's played well at difficult golf courses, PGA Championship where he played well there at Kiawah, and there's other places where he's kind of done well with not having the weapons that a lot of the the flashy young kids have, hitting off the tee and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I think it's just an attitude thing with Big Beautiful. He said it himself. He needs to be a little bit more positive on the golf course. He needs to have a little bit more fun and realize he's, gets to play golf for a living. And I liked it because after he won his back-to-back wins on the Korn Ferry Tour, and he played a couple more times, but then he just went on a vacation and just took some time away from the game instead of really trying to grind it out.
We just caught him. We actually interviewed him right at that time because he was wearing an eye patch because I think it was an eye patch because he had just gotten some skin cancer stuff removed and he was about to go over to Europe. So we had caught him right around that time after those wins. So yeah, it was fun to get a guy's perspective of winning, especially twice in a row, and how he won, which was insane, by the way. That chip that he made from 60 or so yards was just insane for that ball to go in. Almost feels like a bit of fate, was at the hands of Harry Higgs on that day.
Yeah, and then his second win, he held like a 25-footer for eagle against Frankie Sappin in the playoffs. So it's
take the shirt off next time, Rick. Come on, we want it off.
It's going to be a trademark. But no, look, and just to touch on his positive outlook and maybe trying to change things up. It's funny how you said it before, Smylie, where you said you were a tenacious competitor and you were pretty hard on yourself. And, sometimes you see that with a lot of these younger kids.
Right.
And the one thing I hear doing Korn Ferry Tour broadcasts, the one thing I hear of all the veterans that have dropped back to the Korn Ferry Tour, all the guys that are a little older, they all say one thing: I want to have a little bit more fun. I want to play golf like a kid again. I kept making it too much of a job, and I didn't realize, how lucky I was. And I put too much pressure on myself in this era of TrackMan and having a perfect swing and dialing in all your numbers and living on the range. A lot of these kids and veterans forgot how to play the game. So it just that's what I hear. It's a common trend. I hear a lot of guys that are just trying to talk about just being a little less, down on themselves all the time when it's not going their way and just allowing themselves the freedom to play golf again.
James, another guy who I think for a lot of people landed on their radars for the first time a year ago this week is a guy that has a ton of game. I recognize him a lot wearing the San Francisco 49ers hat, big Bay Area 49ers guy, Isaiah Salinda. What can you speak to in terms of his game? Because I feel like every time I've seen him play, it's like, wow, this is one of the guys that does really pass the eye test.
I said the same thing, Charlie, too.
Yeah.
I said it when we were covering him. I'm like, I don't know what he's doing because I look at his stat sheet and I don't know how he hasn't had multiple wins. Like he didn't make a lot of cuts this year. So it was really weird. It's like when he does make a cut and when he got his win in Panama, and I'm not sure if you ever played Panama, Smylie, but it's one of the
it's a rite of passage, man, for the Korn Ferry Tour.
It's one of the more difficult courses on the Korn Ferry Tour, and usually the cuts 2-3 over. It ranges from 5 under to 15 under winning, and I mean he went out and shot 64 in the final round and won by 8. So it's and I think he finished at maybe 12 under. So you go shoot 8 under in the final round, and when, the winning score was meant to be 5 or 6 under par. And at a course like that, and another guy where I was like, all right, Salinda, finally, he's got comfortable, he's got his security now. Can he go and do something special? And when I look at his statistically and I watch him play, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. You hit it miles, you hit it straight, you putt great. Like what's not matching up here? So, yeah, he's one guy that passes the eye test, but I think needs to learn how to play golf a little better, I suppose, like turn his bad rounds into, 1 or 2 under opposed to 1 or 2 over, especially on the Korn Ferry Tour. But I think he's another one. There's about 12 guys that I think their game fits the PGA Tour a little bit better with, you can, like you said before, Smylie, you get to a tough golf course and you can separate from the rest of the field opposed to being like, okay, if I don't birdie the first 3 out of 5 holes and I'm falling behind and, everyone's going to make putts. Like it's just a different mindset. So there's a fair few guys out of this class that didn't do as well on the Korn Ferry Tour, like got their tour-bound status and went to the Korn Ferry, they're going to the PGA Tour, but I kind of expect them to do some better things on the PGA Tour. And, that doesn't always it's not always winning, but it's like reeling off some good results when they didn't really do that on the Korn Ferry Tour. They had their moments, but not the consistency.
Can't sometimes look at the point spreads and just, understand what they mean. Because going into the game, you're looking at it, it's like, okay, Denver's playing better football. They won a couple in a row. Now they're going back home.
The Broncos have to turn around and play on a short week. Sean Payton is returning to New Orleans. The Saints just gave up almost 600 yards of offense to the Buccaneers. So it's going to be interesting kind of gut check.
Newswire, only on Sports Grid.
Guardians, despite being at home in the land, were a home underdog against Tarek Skubal. Enter Lane Thomas, maybe one of the under-the-radar trade deadline acquisitions being dealt from the Nationals. He was huge in the ALDS.
A heavy favorite for the New York Yankees in the series. You're going to look to their best two ball players to be those MVPs. That's Juan Soto and it's Aaron Judge.
The Early Line, only on Sports Grid.
Isaiah Salinda, a player who I feel like has one of the highest ceilings out of any of the top 30 guys. I think his floor is too low. If he's able to get his floor up, much more to where he's making cuts like you're talking about, missing too many cuts. But winning by 8 shots, that tells you everything you need to know about a player, especially at a golf course like Panama, in which if you've been on that bus to and from the city of Panama back to that golf course, that is the rite of passage for any Korn Ferry Tour player sitting next to. I mean, you're just so in there tight. It's so hot. Everybody's sweaty. It's so gross. And 8-shot win at that place is quite the win. But what about just talking about keeping it in that same category? Maybe the best iron player that comes to mind, or the best putter or short game from this group of Korn Ferry Tour graduates?
So Frankie Sappin, he's the best. He'll be the best from around the greens and putting. Like he all year top 5 on the Korn Ferry Tour. He still hits it a mile and great iron player. He just also accuracy struggled a fair bit down the stretch off the tee. I mean, there was some, when he tried to get his first victory, there was holes where he was taking iron off the tee because he was just scared of the miss the previous day. But once again, the way he handled it, trying to get his first Korn Ferry Tour victory, missing greens and having to get up and down. I think, as I said, the last couple of holes, he had to make 3 or 4 putts of around 12, 15 feet to get his first victory. And he did it easy, poured him in. So he's a guy, I think, with that short game, I think Frankie might get a win this year. And I think he'll do it because that short game and the clutch putting, especially in big moments, when he dials it in off the tee and like kind of has those weeks where it works out, the short game is going to save him. And it's, you can sit here and say this guy's got a great short game, but it's almost like he thrives on that 12-foot putt when it means more. And I think that's just there's a lot of guys coming off the Korn Ferry Tour that have the tools to get them in position to win. It's just making that 2 or 3 putts down the stretch when it really means the most with a PGA Tour player that's been there before and you haven't. I just think he has that kind of, I don't know, that dog in him that really it doesn't bother him, the big situation. So,
and to talk a little bit about Paul Peterson, he's played on 6 continents, and I was on a bus with him in Jakarta, Indonesia, to play in the Indonesian Open, Paul Peterson. So I have a lot of respect for this guy, because to go and play the professional game of golf across the world. Being married, having kids, and doing all of that is impossible to do. And for him to find his way to the PGA Tour, the dream that he's probably had going to all of those different countries, wondering where he's going to end up in this game, to achieve the goal of making it there, I think is the one that I have circled and hearted. And you said it best there too. So I couldn't be more in agreement with you, James, on those two guys. So I think we're dialed in. I mean, I'm excited for these guys to see what they're made of at the Sony Open. I know it's going to be important for these guys to get off to hot starts, because beginning of the year, it's challenging golf courses, windy conditions. And you'll see kind of in the summer, a lot of these players that get off to bad starts kind of get more on these Korn Ferry Tour type of golf courses. And that's where you start to see maybe some of these guys that aren't quite fit for the PGA Tour golf courses, but you might see some of these players pick off a win in the summer. So all in all, again, James, I love doing this with you because you're so knowledgeable. You do your homework, and it's incredible how you get to know these guys, and you help us get to know them as well. And I know all the people that listen to this pod feel like they got a head start heading into this 2025 season, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm always a lover of the Korn Ferry Tour. If you listen to our broadcast, it's more about pumping the tires and the stories and really hoping for these guys to do as good as they can, and being objective when I can be, but it's just so fun learning about these, really cool stories and superstars before anyone gets to see them. So yeah, get a little leg in the door there, and it's just fun. I really enjoy it. So it's not really study for me. It's just a joy.
Absolutely. And Charlie, you owe James a schooner, I believe. So I guess we'll have to make that happen soon. Schooner? Schooner. Sorry. And I'm thinking of red schooner. That's like the wine.
we're just so Pot Geeter. How are we saying his last name?
Yeah. So I just say Pot Geeter.
Pot Geeter.
It's like Pot Geeter. It's like a weird like Geeter, but Pot Geeter. He said it's fine. So yeah.
Okay. All just Pot Geeter. Everyone's on the bandwagon. We're all potheads going into 2025. Let's go. All right.
Love it. And that's it. It's a fast and fancy bandwagon too. That thing's going to be flying around the corners.
Oh man, I can't wait to watch these guys this year. We're the potheads. We owe my man a beer, or schooner, I should say. And James, thanks again, man. And look forward to talking to you next year to hear about the next crop.
Awesome, boys. Really enjoy it anytime.